Welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Miner. This weekly no-fluff mindset show arms you with the practical tools you need to get unstuck so you can get exactly what you want out of life. Remember, when you change your mind, your life will follow. Let's get into today's episode. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Unstuck. Thanks so much for joining me yet again. Today, we're bringing up a topic that I love to talk about. Haven't mentioned it much as of yet on the Unstuck podcast, but we're changing that today, and it will be a huge factor in what we talk about in the future on this podcast. So really want to make sure we get into the meat of it right now so you know what I'm talking about when I use these words, and that is ego and intuition. Here is your key point for today. Your intuition will always guide you to be your best self. Can you believe this? We have something within us, our own voice within us, that will always guide us to be our best self, to make the best decision, to do the best thing for us in every single moment of every single day. That is pretty much amazing if you ask me. I have learned so much about myself. I have changed so much about my life because I started to tap into my intuition and use that to guide me. If you follow me on Instagram, if you've listened to my other podcast, then you know one of the big places that I use my intuition is in my food choices. I am an intuitive eater. I don't follow any one program or plan or diet or whatever you want to call it after pretty much my entire life of being on some sort of diet or protocol or plan that wasn't based on my body doing someone else's plan, I guess. I have become fully intuitive with my body to know what food choices I should make at every single meal. I follow exactly my hunger cues, my fullness, my cravings, my desires, what sounds satisfying, all of these things to decide what food choices I make. And this is just one area of my life. It's something I'm very passionate about, being a nutritionist, something I'm really interested in teaching others how to do. But this is just one area. Goes with everything else in my life. This is why the Unstuck podcast is here today, doing what I'm doing, and the swift change that I made from strictly being a nutritionist to talking more about this stuff is because my intuition told me to. It led me here. It led me to talk about what I talk about. Every single episode is brainstormed from my intuition, and I use that as the guiding force for what I talk about, how I talk about it, what I say, which is amazing. It makes it so much easier to record these episodes and to come up with ideas for what would be best for you based on my intuition, which just makes all of life so much easier. And that is one of the reasons why I want to talk about it with you today. So we're going to discuss both the ego and the intuition. The goal is not to ignore or get rid of the ego. I want to say that right away because we kind of have this negative connotation of the ego. And as I describe the ego, you'll see why it is kind of in this negative light. But the ego is actually a really important voice for you. It's more so than a matter of making peace and working with your ego than it is trying to get rid of it or ignore it. Instead, we want to bring that into the picture and know that we don't have to believe it, be able to hear both voices and, go with the one that makes the most sense. And a lot of times it will come across that your ego is making the most sense when in fact it's your intuition that would be the better guiding force. But I guess really what I want for you is to know enough, and this will be something that we get better and better at as we go on in the Unstuck podcast, but I want you to at least be able to feel like you are in charge of your ego versus your ego being in charge of you. That is the ticket here. And far too often we agree with a voice that we have that appears like it's trying to keep us safe. And that's something that we'll learn about our ego. It's trying to keep us safe from self-sabotage. It's trying to basically keep you stuck. But in the time, it feels like it's just not getting you, it's keeping you, I guess, in your comfort zone. It's not getting you out of your comfort zone, which might feel kind of good, actually, in some scenarios, even though at the same time, it's, of course, keeping you stuck, unfulfilled, even feeling listless, or beginning to wonder if we should start listening to something else because you're just not making any progress, not making any moves, still having all these problems and issues, symptoms, whatever it might be. So let's go over both so you have a really good understanding of these different voices that you have in your head. And I think if you really start to think about it, you will notice that there are two different voices in your head. And a lot of times they'll kind of be arguing with each other. It's like, should I or shouldn't I? What would be right versus what would be feel more comfortable, perhaps. One's loud and one's a lot softer. And we'll go through these differences. But I think even without me going through specifically the differences, you can already see areas in your life where you do feel two different voices going on in your head. And a lot of times I would say, gosh, for most of us today, it's like 95% ego voice. And then occasionally we'll get our intuition involved. And our goal is to have the opposite. If possible, that would be awesome. But at least we can get to a point where we're aware of both and can make the decision on which one to listen to easier. Those thoughts that are born because of our beliefs that have been tucked away, whether we know about them or not, those are often ego thoughts. They are there to follow along with those beliefs for safety. When your ego is talking, it will be talking very fast. Quite often, it will be very loud. It's nonstop chatter. Again, you can think of this constant chatter going on in your head. That is your ego. And when your ego's talking, I think one of the most prominent feelings you will feel is stress. Stress and fear, scarcity, panic, control, manipulating, all the negative emotions, but all of them rooted in this base of fear. Now, the interesting thing is that your ego is also logical. The ego will have tons of logical explanations as to why the route that it wants you to take is the right answer. It will basically try to argue and argue and argue for this logical choice. Like, this makes the most sense because it is going towards the safety factor. The ego is also critical. It's judgy of yourself and of others. Again, safety. I like to think of it as your inner mean girl, which makes it sound negative, and I don't want it to sound like that, but it is loud, obnoxious, judgy, critical, making you stressed out, really demanding. So I like to think of it as the inner mean girl that basically does not want to stop talking. Now let's get into the intuition, which is going to be a lot of opposites of that. So intuition is defined as the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So you can already see based on that definition that the intuition doesn't need logic. Logical doesn't matter when it comes to this voice in your head because it understands and knows something regardless of conscious reasoning. The intuition is rooted in love, which of course makes it very different from the ego, which is rooted in fear. You may know of the intuition as your inner voice, inner knowing, inner guidance, whatever you want to call it. It all means the same thing, and it's all based in love. You may also not know that this was your intuition or inner guidance, but you have felt a gut feeling or a heart feeling. There are people, I think, that experience both or one or the other more often, but I think we have all had those experiences where you just knew. You had that gut feeling about your partner the second you saw them, the second you laid eyes on them. You just knew. Or you saw an ad in the paper for a job and instantly, before you had even applied, knew you were going to get that job. You just had that knowing. You felt it in your gut. You felt it in your heart. For me, I feel everything in my heart. When I have an intuitive sense on something, my heart lights up. I can't explain it any other way. It vibrates. I just feel it. Very hard to explain, but I think if you are a heart feeler, then you know that. I do occasionally feel things in my gut, but it's more prominent for the most part in my heart. So be aware of both of those areas where you could start feeling things or you have felt things, and just notice. And now you know that that's your intuition. Now here's where we start connecting the dots as to why it's important that we do tap into this intuitive knowing that we have within us. The intuition is that piece of us that is connected to the universe. It knows, and if you haven't listened to episode 4 yet, and I guess episode 3, I talked about it too. If you haven't yet listened to those episodes, that will be important. So you can go ahead and get into those when this episode is done. But we all know now that we want to be connected to the universe and do so as much as possible. We all are connected. It's just a lot of us aren't feeling that connection or aren't taking action, I guess, based on that connection. And that's what we're really looking for here. Your intuition knows who you really are, what you are working on, what is important, what you truly want out of life, what you like, what you don't like, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, how we truly feel and connect and experience everything about life. And when we talked about the universe and looking for signs from the universe, these often come in the form of our intuition guiding us. So when you have that intuitive sense about something, it's because the universe is connecting with you and through you, guiding you in the right direction. And that is a sign. That's a sign from the universe, those gut feelings or that heart feeling that you get. Or even just that small little voice in your head that just knows. And that's what I really want to talk about, because especially with the intuition, the ego is very much talk, all the chatter. But with intuition, it doesn't necessarily come in the form of words or even thoughts. Many times it is just that feeling, or even it may, could be the gut heart feeling, but a lot of times it's just this knowing, almost like a sense of calm or peace, like you just feel at ease about that, whatever comes up, and you just know. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that tingly sensation in your heart or the butterflies in your stomach, but you have that knowing. If it does come in the form of words, talking, internal chatter, it's actually not chatter. It's very gentle, it's slow, it's quiet, and it's just confident. It's just there. It knows what to do. It's not going to try to talk over the ego, but it's going to be there. And it's up to you to listen to that quiet, slow, gentle voice of knowing. And like I said, often it comes with that feeling as well. So it may feel like knowing, but it may also feel like surrender or trust. It might feel like abundance. It might just feel like relaxation, like you feel your shoulders relax away from your ears which a lot of us are all tensed up here. That's how we carry our stress. But they calm down a little bit and relax when you trust your intuition, when you get that sense of that internal knowing. So we talked about the ego being rooted in logic. It's very logical. However, the intuition is right. It doesn't matter what makes most sense, what everybody else is doing, what the world is doing. Logical reasoning isn't needed. Arguments aren't needed when you use your intuition because it's just right. It feels right. You have that knowing, you have that relief, you have that confidence, and you don't need any other arguments. You don't need to know why. You just know it's there and it's right. I think of the intuition as your best friend. Like if we have that inner mean girl, we also have your best friend who is always looking out for you, always wants the best thing for you, always knows exactly what to say, exactly what to do to make you feel good. It's there. It's within you. We have both within us, and we have unfortunately stuffed our best friend and started listening to that mean girl. Why did we do that to our best friend? Well, over the years, everyday life influences have made it so that our ego has now become more prominent and our intuition is kind of lost. We trust outside influences and sources more than we trust our own internal guidance. And this just happens over time through life. It happened from a young age, most likely. But this means we also have a hard time connecting with our higher power, the universe, or whatever word you use to describe that higher power. And we also have a hard time getting into and staying in a high vibration, which is the whole goal of life, in my opinion. So when we are rooted in our ego, it's going to be harder and harder to climb up that emotional frequency scale because we stay rooted in fear, negativity, judgment, and stress. We're locked in to our comfort zone, which is probably not where you want to stay in. And we settle, we hesitate, we limit our potential, we do the wrong thing for our bodies, we listen to the wrong people about our bodies, we take other people's word for it instead of our own, and we stay low vibe, right? Or we could listen to our intuition, let our intuition be our guide, and have access to your higher power and your deepest desire, and nothing is out of reach. You can be, do, and have whatever it is. You are rooted then in a place of knowing, of trust, ease, peace, flow, confidence. That all sounds pretty darn good and high vibe, of course. In order to get into a positive, healing, get the life you want kind of mindset, which is what we're here to do, you have to let your intuition in. You have to start paying attention to both voices. Again, remember, I'm not saying to shut out your ego entirely. I'm just saying to listen to both and make the right choice. Now we need to know how to do that. Of course, how the heck do we even do that? I have 3 steps for you. They're actually pretty simple. Of course, the mantra of this show, simple but not easy. Here we go. The first one, acknowledge the ego for what it is and choose differently. All we have to do, the very first thing, is acknowledge that mean girl voice. Just notice those thoughts that are rooted in fear. They seek out comfort and safety. The ones that try to keep you from taking action or changing your mind, acting differently, moving forward, getting out of the comfort zone. They are often frantic, demanding, stressful. They keep you bound up. And they'll be the ones that have should, shouldn't, could, couldn't, can't, won't, don't, all of those bad words in air quotes, bad words in my book, they will often have those. If you're really looking, if you're really taking every single voice that you hear and analyzing it, which I don't think is a bad idea, that would be awesome, but you will know it is the ego if it has those bad words in them that are very definitive, that are very negative, and they'll be rooted in limiting beliefs. So now that you've done some work, you've started to look more into your belief system that you've built in your subconscious mind over the years, and you do find some limiting beliefs in there that you know exist. The voice that comes out of those thoughts or those beliefs are ego voices. And all we have to do is notice them. Notice them. We will choose differently after we go to step 2, which is finding your intuition. We've acknowledged the ego. We've done that work. Now we need to acknowledge the intuition, and these can happen simultaneously and probably should happen simultaneously. First of all, know that it is there. It is there within you. It's been there since birth. You just have been ignoring it. So it's not like you don't have an intuitive guidance system. We all do. You just have to find it. My favorite way is to free write. I love this. This is going to be your action step for today. Try free writing from both your ego and your intuition. So get out a pen and paper, find your journal, and just start writing. You don't have to have any thought or idea. Just write. Write about your day. Write about what's bugging you. Write about a decision you don't know how to make. Write about the good stuff, the bad stuff. Just put pen to paper. It might even take some time before you write anything. You might just not have anything, especially if you're not used to journaling or writing about your thoughts. Just write. This is called free writing. You can write whatever you want. It can be as negative and gross and bad as you want. You're just getting it out. And when you start writing, it's going to come from your ego. Your ego will start the conversation. So get all that out. Let your ego have its day. And then what's left? And this is where it gets really interesting because you might not feel anything. You probably won't. You'll get all that stuff out from your ego. And then it's like, all right, I guess I'm done. No, you're not done. You're just getting started. So now close your eyes, take a deep breath, get comfortable, get relaxed. Maybe feel what you just wrote if it feels like something that needs to be kind of eked out, but just sit and then open your eyes and get back to writing from a sense of gentleness, of comfort, no stress, no nothing. This is calm, easy, free writing. Then what comes out? How do you respond to what you just wrote? What would you say to calm your fears? Everything that you just wrote, what would be the response to that from this calm, stress-free place? Just again, start writing. What do you know? So the ego wrote all the things that it thinks. And now what do you know that is different or can respond to what the ego has said? Like, I'm scared about this. I don't know if this is right. I guess we'll give you an off-the-cuff example here. Say you don't know if you should take a job or not. And it's stressing you out. Like, it's going to be more money, but you have a longer commute. It'll take more time away from your family. You don't really love what you're going to be doing, but it's more money. So you don't know what to do. So you're going through all that. Like, I don't know what to do. This is so stressful. This is your ego. Like, I really need to make more money. I really want to make more money. I guess I can get over the fact that I'm going to be bored all day, that I'm not going to see my family as much because at least I'll be able to, put food on the table a little easier. This is all coming from your ego, right? This is what you're free writing. Now that you're done, when you've got all those fears out, everything you're contemplating, now the intuition can come in. Respond to that. So what would you say to calm your fears about this potential job change? So when you come back to your journal without much thought or really diving in, your pen writes, family is most important. And that's all you need to know. That is what is coming from your intuition. And I do want to break in here. This brings a good point, especially with your writing. When it's your intuition, it will also come as being very succinct. Sometimes it won't even be full sentences. It will just be words or broken, fragmented sentences, but it still has the knowing and it still has the message that you need. So I do want to put that out there and actually let you know that's one of the best ways to know that it is coming from your intuition, is that it will just be like a couple words and be like, oh, well, there you go. My intuition is done. Whereas your ego is like 4 pages worth of fears and writing and constant words and nonstop chatter. Your intuition is often very short and sweet. So there is an example. Now you know the right move for you. The best thing for you in that moment is that your family is most important. So what decision would make that true? There you go. You feel that relief because you know you are connected with what is best for you. All right. So hopefully that made some sense and you could see how that could possibly happen. If you are doing this exercise, you're doing the free writing and it doesn't come right away, that is totally fine. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Just keep trying. Just keep at it. Eventually you will start conversing, I guess, with your intuition. It will start coming forward. It just depends on how often you've used it in the past, however many years, how, I guess, deep down buried it is versus how strong your ego is. That's all there is to it, but it will come forward. All right. And then the last thing, so we're going back to this example I just gave. When you trust it, which is the last step of this, once it says family is most important, then you need to trust that. You need to know that that is your intuition. That is the guidance that will get you exactly where you want to and need to be, even if it doesn't make sense right now. Even if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to pass this up. There was so much money. I really wanted to make more money. I wanted to start saving. Again, this is not trusting it. That's going back to your ego. You have to trust it. And honestly, it just takes practice. It takes wanting more for yourself, wanting better experiences, wanting an easier way to make decisions, increasing your vibration, thinking more positive thoughts. You have to just want all of that. And it takes practice. It will come as you continue to do the work. All right, my friends, that wraps up today's episode. Again, don't forget, your action item is to try that free writing exercise from your ego and intuition. Give it a try, see how it goes. If you don't want to write, you could also try just kind of doing it in your head, but I highly recommend getting it all out onto paper. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Thank you for passing the information on to people you think would also enjoy it or need it or learn something. And if you are loving it, I would absolutely forever be so grateful if you would leave a review for the show and let others know why they would love the show. Thanks so much, ladies. I'll talk to you next week.